Shalom. This week we are reading Parshat Vayeshev, onto the stage of our consciousness and literally setting the stage for the next stage of Jewish history. Enter Yosef, the son born to Yaakov in his old age, son of his beloved Rachel. Torah testifies that Yosef, young, vital, and handsome, Yosef, who was sold down into the spiritual abandonment and the ground zero of immorality, which was Egypt, Yosef remained pure and untainted. Thus we find Psalms 81:6. The verse states, "He appointed it as a testimony for Yosef when he went out over the land of Egypt." And the word Yosef in that verse is spelled with an extra hey, the letter that represents God's own name, as if God himself were testifying to Yosef's character. So close and so real was Yosef's relationship with Hashem, so godly, while yet remaining quite physical, Yosef was, that he withstood the test of the opportunity of sinning with his master's wife. And thus Yosef represents mastery over the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. And our sages consistently refer to Yosef as Yosef HaTzadik, Yosef the righteous, one of very few personalities to receive this homage. But Yosef's dreams, especially his telling them over to his brothers, irked and alienated his brothers, and they called him Baal HaChalamot, as in chapter 37, verse 19. And they said to one another, "Look, that Baal HaChalamot is coming." It's translated as that dreamer, but it really means that master of dreams. Yosef was the master of dreams. How apropos, as this month of Kislev, the month of Chanukah, during which we invariably will always be reading the Torah portions about Yosef, this month of Kislev is known as the month of dreams. Yosef's descent into Egypt was brought about by his dreams. And once there, his ascent to power was brought about by Pharaoh's dreams. And the majority of the dreams in the Torah are read during this month. And you know, the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, is sometimes called the book of stories. It's all about the beginning, the creation of the world, and those early generations, those first generations. And it records the doings of our patriarchs, called the Avot, who were pillars of the world. And it was they who were chosen by the Almighty to forge a path for all time, to teach the world of the truth of the one God, and to ensure that the legacy of that knowledge is passed down in every generation. And nothing in this book of Bereshit, and in fact nothing anywhere in the Torah, is anecdotal. We always remind ourselves of that. The incidents recorded are so amazing, but what about the incidents that are not recorded? We learn of these things, these adventures that befell Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Yosef, their children. But what about all the other days and nights, all the things that transpired in between that we don't learn about? The thing is, the Torah records that which is fundamental and elemental and pivotal for all time. We're learning about that which was set into motion as massive building blocks in time. These are patterns that were set into motion, set into history. These actions of these people and what befell them. Regarding these things, we are taught the principle, Ma'aseh Avot Siman Lebanim. That which befell the forefathers is a sign for the children. So, Yosef and his brothers. What was the argument really all about on the deepest of levels? Verse 2 of chapter 37 begins with the words, "These are the generations of Yaakov, Yosef." You see, Yaakov saw Yosef as his hope, as the continuation of his own goal of tikkun, of the program, of fixing. And open up your heart in the deepest way. The main goal of life, for all of us, is fixing. Fixing the sin of the tree of knowledge, the confusion of doubt, which crept into the fabric of creation, the mixed up confusion of bad and good, which is part of our everyday lives. We're all involved in this fixing every day. So, and this is just a side point, but while there are numerous opinions as to the identity of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, the overwhelming consensus is that it was wheat. And by the way, the real sin of the eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge was not waiting until Shabbat to eat, when it would have been permitted to them. Hence the loaves of the challah bread upon which the Sabbath is sanctified. So since Yaakov's sons are all shepherds, not agriculturalists. Didn't you think it strange that Yosef's dream was about sheaves of wheat? And behold, the verse states, they were minding sheaves in the middle of the field. The field is the Garden of Eden, and the field is also this world, the playing field, where we make this tikkun. And didn't you think it strange that after selling Yosef, the brothers sit down to eat bread? And Yosef is the only one in the entire land of Egypt, we shall be learning, who has the power to gather the grain. And how Torah states that his master granted him everything but the bread he ate, albeit a euphemism for his wife. But why do we see the constant references to wheat and bread regarding Yosef and his brothers? Because their argument was really about how to fix the tree of knowledge, how to serve Hashem in this world, how to clarify and sift the mixture of good and evil. That is the work of the field, to bring forth, to make shine the hidden light. And the field, this world, our everyday activities, needs plowing and planting and harvesting and winnowing to separate the grain from the chaff and straw. This was the root reason for the exile in Egypt, as we read in Exodus chapter 1 and verse 14. They embittered their lives with hard work, with mortar and with bricks, and with every labor of the field. And just as the behavior of the brothers who had to bind sheaves in the field, their behavior was the root of the Egyptian exile, so too Yosef was the root of redemption from Egypt. As he foresaw in his dream, chapter 37 and verse 7, my sheaf stood up and also remained standing. Now all this, in my opinion, is breathtaking, but I digress. There are so many levels of meaning here. We know that the Torah has many levels of meaning, but when it's interpreted, for example, on a symbolic level, nothing can ever take away its simplest level of meaning. But yet, in our case here, in Parshat Vayeshev, how could we take this story literally? The whole story of the bitter enmity and rivalry between the brothers and Yosef. Yosef, the righteous, the tzaddik, who brought their negative speech to the attention of their father. The conduct of the brothers, known as the holy tribes of Israel, toward Yosef, throwing him in a pit, selling him. They were not a band of ruffians, they were tzaddikim. So how are we to understand their treatment of Yosef, their selling of him to Egypt? A sin so severe that it must be accounted for in every generation. This really happened. It's no mere metaphor. Yaakov was a great tzaddik, and the brothers were so holy, but none, including the righteous Yosef, are beyond or immune to the rebuke, the reproach of our sages, who teach that it was Yaakov's favoritism towards Yosef which led to this devastating sibling rivalry, and that from here, this is the main place in the Torah where we learn that parents must be very careful not to give the appearance of showing favoritism. I don't have the answers to any of these questions. But there's one small point, perhaps even something that we might have considered insignificant, that I would like to call your attention to today. So Yaakov sends Yosef out to check up on his brother's welfare and that of their flocks. Chapter 37 and verse 14. Yosef agrees immediately to his father's request, though actually it ends up taking him 22 years of exile and suffering to fulfill that mission of checking on his brothers. Yaakov was well aware of the tension between Yosef and his brothers. He knew that Yosef was distanced from them, as the Torah testifies with regard to the brothers. It states, and his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers. So they hated him. They could not speak with him peacefully. Yet Yaakov sends Yosef to his brothers on a mission that, it slowly becomes clear, formed the first link in the events that would lead to the descent of Israel into Egypt. Now, from our simple understanding of the verses, not only was Yaakov aware that this mission could endanger Yosef, Yosef himself knew that he may be placing himself in danger, yet Yosef was still willing to fulfill his father's request. So Yosef searches for his brothers, but he can't find them. He's about to give up and abandon his search, when suddenly a man appears before him. This man guides him and instructs him where to find his brothers. Verse 15, then a man found him, and behold, he was straying in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what are you looking for? And he said, I'm looking for my brothers. Tell me now, where are they pasturing? And the man said, they have traveled away from here, For I overheard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers, and he found them in Dothan. So this man shows up. He shows Yosef the way. Yosef meets up with his brothers, and thus begins the story of his sale, his descent to Egypt, and ultimately the descent of all of Israel into Egyptian slavery. Everything that happens can be said to happen on account of that man. So who's this mysterious man that Yosef meets? It would seem that a totally anonymous man plays a very central role in this whole story. The whole Egyptian exile wouldn't have happened had this man not pointed the way to Yosef to meet his brothers. So who's this man? So the famed and holy sages are divided in their opinions. Keeping with the simple meaning of the text, Ibn Ezra opines that he was a regular man, a simple passerby. Rashi, on the other hand, cites the Midrash that this man was none other than the angel Gabriel, who was sent from heaven especially in order to direct Yosef and to begin the suffering of Egypt. The Torah seemingly alludes to this, for rather than have the verse state, and Yosef found a man, actually the verse states in Hebrew, and a man found him, meaning it was the angel who found Yosef. God brought these circumstances together in order to achieve his end result. Ramban also explains the verse according to the Midrash, but he expounds a little bit more. He says that the verse emphasizes that Yosef had strayed from the road and didn't know where to go, and therefore he had actually a perfectly good and justified reason to return home, and that way he would also spare himself the dangerous meet with his brothers. But that's not what happened, states the Ramban, because God had a plan which he brought to fruition. Ramban states, it further informs us that God's decrees are true. For the Holy One, blessed be he, arranged a guide for him without his knowledge to bring him to his brothers. And then the Ramban says these words. He says, this is what our sages mean. People are angels. That this story was not for no reason, but to let us know that Hashem's plan will come to pass. His decree is what is true and what will be established, and it doesn't matter what a person does, Hashem is in charge. So open up your heart in the deepest way. In other words, there are two ways of understanding the words, and a man found him, that are expressed by our sages. One, there was a regular guy, a passerby. Or two, that it was an angel sent from heaven. What if they're the same thing? On the one hand, the Ish, the man that found him, is a Malach Hashem, an angel of God. At the same time, he's a simple passerby. What we're being taught here is that Hashem sends us angels. He sends everybody angels, but the Malach, the angel, which by the way the word means messenger, usually appears as a person. Any of us, opening the heart in the deepest way, any of us could be somebody's angel, somebody's divinely appointed angel, messenger. But receiving the divine message which he brings us is up to the person. Not everyone can see the angel within the person that we're confronting. The uniqueness of Yosef, what stood by him all those years in Egypt, the uniqueness of Yosef was that in everything that happened to him in life, and in every person that he met along the way, he was able to see the angel sent by God. He saw God's guiding hand, just as he summarized to his brothers at the end of this whole saga, in chapter 45, Parshat Vayigash, we'll find that Yosef says, but now, do not be sad, and let it not trouble you that you sold me here, for it was to preserve life that God sent me before you. For already 2 years of famine have passed in the midst of the land, and for another 5 years there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to make for you a remnant in the land and to preserve it for you for a great deliverance. And now you did not send me here, but God. And he made me a father to Pharaoh, a lord over all his household, and a ruler over the entire land of Egypt. And actually, this understanding sheds light on just one more of the many connections between Yosef and Chanukah, and the fact that we always read the parshiot of Yosef around Chanukah. Chanukah is about banishing the forces of darkness and advancing the cause of light in the world. It's hard to see in the dark, and harder to see the angels that are concealed in events. But when we kindle the light, both literally, as in the lights of Hanukkah, and figuratively, as in our own life's work of fixing, of everything that the Hanukkah lights represent, then we can see all the divinely appointed angels that meet us along our path. Amen. May each of us merit to see and recognize in each other the angels that we meet.